When the cop pulled his gun on the lone man sitting quietly in the corner booth of the home plate diner, Emily did something that could have cost her everything. She stepped right between them. What she didn't know was that the man she was defending was the most powerful being in the world. Emily Carter was 28 years old, and she'd been working at the same diner since she was 16. The home plate wasn't fancy. The paint was peeling. The booth squeaked. The air conditioning worked when it felt like it. But it was home. Rosie Miller, the owner, had found Emily sleeping on the streets when she was just 15, running from abusive foster care. No money, no hope. No one. Rosie didn't ask questions. She just said, "You look hungry. Come on in." And Emily never left. If you've ever felt like someone looked at you and saw more than the world did, then you'll understand what Rosie meant to Emily. She wasn't just a boss. She was the mother fate had denied her, the family she never had. That night, the diner was almost empty. Just 3 tables occupied, an elderly couple sharing a bowl of soup, a mom with 2 young kids trying to get them to eat, and in the darkest corner, a man alone. Emily had noticed him when he walked in. He was hard to miss. Tall. Dark hair that fell slightly over eyes of an unusual color, something between amber and green, dressed simply, but with an elegance that didn't quite fit a neighborhood diner. He ordered coffee, just coffee, and sat there, watching everything with an intensity that made Emily feel seen. Not in a creepy way, in a curious way. Like he was studying every person in the diner, every interaction, every smile. Like a scientist observing a species he'd never seen before. Emily poured his coffee. Their eyes met for a second. "Thank you," he said. His voice was deep, smooth, with an accent she couldn't quite place. "You're welcome," she replied. "Need anything else?" He smiled slightly. "Just a quiet place to think," he said. "It's been a while since I've found one." Something in that response made Emily pause. But before she could say anything, the diner door flew open, and Officer Kevin O'Malley walked in. Emily knew him. The whole neighborhood knew him. Kevin was the kind of cop who gave the whole profession a bad name, corrupt to the core, arrogant, cruel to those who couldn't defend themselves. He and his partners were known for shaking down local businesses, for fabricating offenses, for making life a living hell for anyone who didn't show them respect. And he had a new target. The mysterious man in the corner. Kevin walked straight to his table. His 2 partners stood near the door, blocking the exit. The diner went silent. The mom with the kids pulled them closer. The elderly couple lowered their eyes. No one wanted to draw attention when Kevin was on the hunt. Emily stopped breathing. "ID," Kevin said. His voice was loud, projected for everyone to hear. "I want to see your ID, now." The man with the amber eyes looked up at Kevin, not with fear, with something that looked like curiosity. "May I ask why?" he said calmly. "Because I said so," Kevin replied. "You're not from around here. I don't recognize your face, and people I don't recognize in places I know make me suspicious." The man didn't move. "I'm just having coffee," he said. Kevin took a step forward. His hand went to the gun in his holster. "You're challenging me," he said, his voice lower now, more dangerous. "That's very, very stupid." Emily felt her blood boil. She knew this routine. Kevin would pick on someone who looked vulnerable, humiliate them, threaten them, and if the person reacted, they'd end up in jail, or worse. The man with the amber eyes didn't look vulnerable, but Kevin wasn't going to stop. He never stopped. "Get up," Kevin ordered. "Hands where I can see them." The man sighed, as if this was just tedious, and that infuriated Kevin even more. He drew his gun. The entire diner held its breath. "I said," Kevin pointed the gun at the man's face, "get up." The man didn't move. His eyes, those strange eyes, met Emily's for a second, and there was something in them she couldn't explain. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was almost like pity. Like he felt sorry for Kevin, for everything Kevin represented. Kevin pulled the hammer back. The click of the metal echoed in the silence. "Last chance," he said. "Or I'll give you a reason to never challenge a law enforcement officer again." And that's when Emily acted. She didn't think. She didn't calculate. She just moved. 1 second she was behind the counter. The next, she was standing between Kevin and the man with the amber eyes, facing the gun. "What are you doing?" Kevin hissed. Emily felt her heart pounding so hard she thought it would burst out of her chest. Her hands were shaking. Every cell in her body screamed at her to get out of the way. But she didn't move. "This man hasn't done anything," she said. Her voice was steady despite the fear. "He came in, ordered coffee, and he's sitting quietly. There's no crime in that." Kevin looked at her like she was a cockroach that had dared to crawl on his shoe. "Get out of the way," he said. "No." The word came out before Emily could think, and something shifted in the air. Kevin took a step forward. The gun still pointed, but now also pointed at her. "You know who I am," he said quietly. "I do," Emily replied. "That's why I'm not going to let you commit another injustice." "Injustice?" Kevin laughed, an ugly laugh, bitter. "You think this is injustice? Honey, you don't know what injustice is, but if you don't get out of my way right now, you're about to find out." Emily didn't move. Behind her, the man with the amber eyes was perfectly silent. She could feel him there. She could feel those strange eyes watching everything, and for some reason, it gave her strength. Kevin brought the gun closer. The tip of the barrel was inches from Emily's face. "Last chance," he said. Emily closed her eyes, waiting for the worst. But the worst didn't come. Instead, Rosie's voice cut through the silence. "Kevin O'Malley," she said. Her voice trembled, but it was strong. "Get out of my diner, now." Rosie was standing behind the counter, the phone in her hand. "I've already called headquarters," she continued. "They're recording everything, every word, every threat." It was a lie. Emily knew it was a lie, but Kevin didn't know. He looked at Rosie, at the phone, at Emily, at the man with the amber eyes, and then, slowly, he holstered his gun. "This isn't over," he said, staring straight at Emily. "You have no idea who you're messing with." He turned sharply, walked stiffly towards the door. His partners cleared a path for him, stepping aside quickly. And before he left, Officer O'Malley glanced back one last time, his expression venomous. "You'll regret this, Waitress," he sneered. "I promise you that." The door swung shut with a soft click. The home plate diner fell silent for a long, drawn-out moment. The air seemed to thicken with unspoken tension. Then a child started crying. Then another. And their mother pulled them close, a gesture of comfort and fear. The elderly couple at the corner booth rose stiffly and left without a word, their faces etched with worry. Rosie dropped her phone on the counter, the clatter echoing in the unnerving quiet. She steadied herself on the countertop, trembling visibly. "Emily!" The voice came from behind her, low and steady. She whirled around, startled. The man with the amber eyes was standing now, taller than she'd first realized. And there was something different about his eyes, a subtle change, something that glimmered faintly, like embers deep within a dying fire, threatening to burst into flame. "What you did was very brave," he stated matter-of-factly. Emily swallowed hard, her throat suddenly dry. "Or very stupid," she retorted, the words tumbling out before she could fully process them. "Perhaps a bit of both," he conceded, a faint smile playing on his lips. "But mostly brave." He extended his hand, his right hand. "Perfectly normal. Human. My name is Damien," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the very floorboards. Emily shook his hand. His skin was warmer than it should have been, much warmer, almost feverish. An unusual heat radiated from his touch. "Emily," she replied, feeling a strange calmness wash over her. "I know," Damien responded, his eyes locking onto hers. And before she could ask how he knew, "Thank you, Emily. Nobody does what you did. Not for strangers. Emily shrugged, trying to downplay the enormity of what had just happened. It was the right thing to do, she insisted, though a shiver ran down her spine. Damien studied her for a long moment, his gaze unnervingly intense. His eyes were impossible to read. Too deep. Too ancient for such a young face. It was like looking into the depths of a primordial forest. The right thing, he repeated slowly as if savoring the words. It's been a long time since I've heard someone say that and actually mean it. He placed a bill on the table. Much more than the coffee cost, a generous gesture. I'll be back, he said, his voice carrying a weight of untold ages. That's a promise. Then he walked towards the door with a quiet confidence. Opened it. The streetlight illuminated his face for a fleeting second, and Emily could have sworn she saw something flicker across his face, something that shimmered, something that looked like scales. But when she blinked, it was gone. And Emily stood there, in the nearly empty diner, unaware that she had just defended the most powerful being that had ever walked the earth, the Dragon King, and that her life would never be the same. Emily didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Officer O'Malley's gun pointed at her. She saw those amber-green eyes watching everything. She saw scales that she might have imagined. Maybe. At 6 in the morning, she was at the diner, exhausted and on edge. Rosie was already there, sitting at one of the tables hunched over, her face paler than usual, her hands trembling around a lukewarm cup of coffee. Rosie. Emily sat beside her, concern etched on her face. What happened? Rosie looked up, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resignation. And Emily saw something she had never seen before on her foster mother's face. Fear. Genuine, bone-deep fear. They came, Rosie whispered, her voice barely audible. Last night. After you left. 2 men in suits, said they represented. Gerald Thornton. The name was chillingly familiar. Gerald Thornton owned half the neighborhood. Hotels, upscale restaurants, office buildings. He had transformed entire streets into high-end zones, ruthlessly displacing families who had lived there for generations, crushing businesses that had stood for decades. And now, he wanted the block where the Home Plate Diner stood. What did they say? Emily asked, dread pooling in her stomach. Rosie slid a document across the table. Emily read it. It was a purchase offer. For the diner. For the building. For everything. The amount was insultingly low, barely enough to cover Rosie's medical bills. This is ridiculous, Emily exclaimed, her voice rising in anger. The land alone is worth 10 times this amount, I know, Rosie replied, her voice laced with despair. That's why I refused. The first time. The first time? Emily felt her stomach plummet. Rosie. When was the first time? 3 months ago. Rosie admitted, her eyes filled with shame and regret, and again a month ago, and 2 weeks ago. Each time the offer gets lower, each time they get more. Insistent. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought I could handle it myself. Rosie reached out and touched Emily's face, her touch surprisingly gentle. Because you already do so much for me. I didn't want to worry you. Emily took Rosie's hand, squeezing it tightly. What else did they say last night? Rosie hesitated, her eyes darting around the diner as if she were afraid of being overheard. 48 hours, she said finally, the words hanging heavy in the air. They gave me 48 hours to accept, or there will be consequences. The word hung in the air like a dark cloud. Consequences. Emily knew that kind of language, knew what people like Gerald Thornton did when they didn't get what they wanted. Accidental fires, problems with licenses, inspections that conveniently discovered violations that didn't exist. We won't let them do this, Emily declared, her voice filled with defiance. We'll find a lawyer. We'll go to the press. My dear, Rosie interrupted her gently, her eyes filled with a heartbreaking sadness. With what money? You know how much I owe the hospital. You know we can barely pay the bills. A lawyer, the press, that takes time as money. And all we have is 48 hours. Emily opened her mouth to argue, but she had nothing to say. Because Rosie was right. They were alone. Without money, without power, without anyone. Against a man who had bought half the city. The diner opened at 8 in the morning. Emily worked on autopilot, serving coffee, taking orders, smiling at customers, but her mind was elsewhere. 48 hours, less than 2 days to find an impossible solution. At 10 in the morning, the door swung open, and the nightmare got worse. Officer Kevin O'Malley strode in, but he wasn't alone this time. 2 men accompanied him. They weren't cops. They were inspectors. Emily recognized the badges. Department of Health. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice trembling slightly. Officer O'Malley smirked. That cruel smile she had seen the night before. "Routine inspection," he sneered, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "We received an anonymous complaint, serious hygiene problems, risk to public health." "That's a lie," Emily spat out, her voice laced with venom. Officer O'Malley shrugged, feigning indifference. "We'll find out, won't we?" He gestured towards the inspectors. "Start with the kitchen." The 2 men entered without waiting for permission, their faces impassive. Emily looked at Rosie, her heart sinking. Rosie was ashen, trembling, clinging to the counter, as if she were about to collapse at any moment. "You can't do this," Emily said to Officer O'Malley, her voice shaking with barely suppressed rage. "Not without a warrant. Not without—" "Actually—" Officer O'Malley interrupted her, his voice dripping with malice. "I can. When there's an imminent risk to public health, the normal rules don't apply." He leaned closer, whispering in a menacing tone. "You should have stayed quiet last night. Waitress, now you're going to find out what happens when you mess with me." Emily clenched her fists, her knuckles turning white, but there was nothing she could do. No way to stop it. The inspectors spent 2 hours in the kitchen, 2 hours photographing, measuring, noting down every perceived infraction, and when they finished, they handed Rosie a document. 23 violations. One of them said, his voice monotone and devoid of emotion, "The establishment is closed until further assessment. Minimum 30 days. 30 days, Rosie Miller whispered. 30 days without a license. 30 days of bills piling up, sky high. 30 days that meant the death of the home plate diner. Emily Carter snatched the document from Rosie's hand. She read every line. And then she stopped, because something didn't make sense. The date at the top of the document. December 17th. But today was December 14th. The document was dated 3 days in the future, as if it had already been prepared before the inspection even happened. Emily looked up at Officer Kevin O'Malley. He was smirking, knowing she'd caught on, knowing it didn't matter. "This is fake," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Prove it," Officer O'Malley retorted, his eyes cold as ice. He turned, walked toward the door, and before he left he glanced back, a threatening look in his eyes. 48 hours, ladies," he sneered. "After that, well, let's just say things could get a lot worse." The door slammed shut. Rosie collapsed into a chair, her face a mask of despair, and for the first time since Emily had known her. Rosie began to cry, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Emily didn't know what to do, didn't know how to fix this. But she knew one thing. She needed proof. She needed something that showed Officer O'Malley and Gerald Thornton were working together, that the inspection was bogus, that all of this was a conspiracy to steal the diner, and she knew exactly where she could get it. That night, Emily waited, her heart pounding in her chest, waited until Rosie went home, until the diner was empty, until the streets fell silent, shrouded in the darkness of night. Then she made her way to Officer O'Malley's office. It wasn't a good idea, a terrible idea. In fact, it was a borderline insane idea. But it was the only one she had. The office was on the second floor of the precinct, that grey, imposing building. Emily knew the building. She'd been there once, years ago, when Rosie needed to file a police report after a B&E. The back window was broken, had been broken for months. Nobody bothered to fix it. Too much paperwork. Emily scaled the wall, careful not to snag her jacket on the jagged glass. Officer O'Malley's office was a mess, a disaster zone. Papers everywhere, empty coffee cups, stained with rings of forgotten caffeine. An ancient computer that probably didn't work right. Collecting dust on the corner of his desk, but it wasn't the computer Emily wanted. It was the files. The filing cabinet drawers were unlocked, a testament to O'Malley's arrogance, or maybe his laziness. Emily started to search, her fingers flying over the labels. She went through dozens of folders, reports, documents. Most of it was boilerplate paperwork, utterly useless, until she found a red folder, a splash of colour in the drab room. Thornton Properties, she read on the label, her breath hitching in her throat. She opened it, her hand trembling, and her blood ran cold, a shiver snaking down her spine. Inside were photos, pictures of Rosie's diner, of other businesses in the neighborhood, of houses, of apartments, the kinds of places people work their entire lives for, and, along with each photo, a check. Checks from Gerald Thornton, the man who was trying to run them out of business, payable to Officer Kevin O'Malley, the man who was supposed to protect them, dated throughout the last 6 months. The total amount was obscene, staggering. Officer O'Malley wasn't just doing favors for Gerald. He was on his payroll, a puppet dancing to Thornton's tune. Emily snapped pictures of everything, her phone flashing in the darkness, every document, every check, every photo, a damning indictment of their corruption. Her hands were shaking so badly that some of the images came out blurry, but it was enough. It had to be enough. She carefully put everything back, trying to erase every trace of her presence, closed the drawer, her heart hammering against her ribs, and she was almost to the window when she heard footsteps, heavy and deliberate, voices, muttered voices. Coming from the hallway, Emily froze, her body stiff with fear. If they found her here, trespassing, theft of police documents. Officer O'Malley would love that. She'd be lucky to get away with just 10 years in prison. Her life essentially over. The footsteps grew closer, louder, more menacing. The doorknob turned, the click echoing in the silent room. Emily dove behind the desk. Throwing herself to the floor, she held her breath, praying she was hidden enough. The door creaked open, light spilling into the room. "Yeah," said a voice. The voice of Officer O'Malley, smooth and oily. "Yeah, I understand, but she's stubborn. The waitress gonna need more pressure." A pause, the air thick with unspoken threats. He was on the phone, his voice low and conspiratorial. "No," Officer O'Malley continued. "I'm not going to do anything stupid. I just need more time. The old lady's almost breaking. One more push, and she'll take anything." Emily squeezed her eyes shut, tears pricking at the corners. Each word confirmed what she already knew, cemented the betrayal, but hearing it made it real. Hearing it made it inescapable, the weight of their corruption pressing down on her. "Sure," Officer O'Malley said. "I'll be there tomorrow at 10, at his office." "Yeah. Bye, Mr. Thornton." The phone clattered as he slammed it down. Footsteps approached the desk, circling her hiding place. Emily stopped breathing, convinced her life was about to end. The drawer above her slid open, the sound scraping against her raw nerves. She could see Officer O'Malley's shoes just inches from her face. Polished black leather, the symbol of his twisted authority. He took something, some object that she couldn't see, closed the drawer with a bang, and then He left. The door clicked shut, leaving her alone in the darkness, trapped by her own daring. Emily waited. 1 minute. Felt like an eternity. 2. Her muscles screamed in protest. 5. Still no sound. Only then did she move, her body aching and stiff. She climbed back through the window, careful to avoid the shards of glass. Climbed down the wall, her hands scraped and bleeding. Ran, her lungs burning with each ragged breath, ran until she couldn't run anymore. Her body pushed to its absolute limit, and when she finally stopped, gasping for air, she was standing in front of the diner, the sign flickering in the night, breathless, trembling, but with proof, the damning evidence tucked safely away. It wasn't enough to go to the cops. The cops were Officer O'Malley. The cops were bought, but maybe, just maybe, it was enough for the press, for a lawyer, for someone who could help, someone with the power to fight back, if she could find someone in time. 48 hours. Now it was less than 36. The clock ticking relentlessly. Emily looked up at the dark sky, searching for some kind of sign. For the first time in a long time, she prayed. A desperate plea whispered into the night. Prayed that someone would hear her, that someone would help them. And someone did hear her. It just wasn't who she expected. The next morning, Emily arrived at the diner at 6 again, driven by a desperate hope. But this time, someone was already there, sitting at the same table, in the same corner. Damien, but different. A transformed presence. The eyes that had seemed strange yesterday were now impossible. Amber and green, glowing with an inner light, as if there was fire burning within them. The skin that had looked normal now revealed something more. Scales, Dornak small, green, shimmering on his temples, along his jawline, glistening softly in the weak morning light. And when he rose to greet her, Emily saw his right hand, and her blood ran cold. It was no longer a human hand. It was larger, covered in black scales, with claws in place of fingernails, sharp and lethal. A dragon's hand. Emily stopped dead in her tracks, her mouth suddenly dry. Her heart leaped into her throat. "You," she started, her voice catching in her throat, but the words died there, unformed and unspoken, because she understood. In a single, shattering second, everything made sense, the pieces falling into place with a sickening finality, the way he watched people, as if he'd never seen humans up close before, the unnatural warmth of his skin, the strangeness of his eyes, piercing and knowing, the way Officer O'Malley had reacted to him, as if he instinctively knew he was standing before something dangerous, something unnatural. "You are," she tried again, her voice a strained whisper. Damien smiled, a slow, deliberate gesture that sent shivers down her spine, and when he smiled, she saw teeth, teeth that were a little too sharp, a little too long. "My true name is Lord Damien Ashford," he said, his voice still soft. But there was something else in it now, something ancient, something powerful, and I am the king of dragons. Emily should have run, her instincts screaming at her to flee, should have screamed, her terror overwhelming her senses, should have done anything except stand there, frozen in place, staring at him as if the world had stopped spinning. But she couldn't move. Not out of fear, not entirely, out of something else, something deeper, something she couldn't quite name, out of recognition, a primal understanding. "Why?" she asked finally, the word barely audible. "Why are you here? Why now?" Damien moved closer, his eyes locking on hers. Each step revealed more of what he was. More scales, more contained power. More of the creature that he hid beneath the carefully constructed human facade. "Because you defended me," he said, his voice resonating with an otherworldly power. Without knowing what I was, without expecting anything in return, you stepped between me and a gun. For a stranger. He paused before her, his eyes locked with hers, and Emily felt like she was looking into the heart of a star. I've walked among humans for 500 years, Damien continued. 500 years I've observed, studied, tried to understand, and in all that time, no one has ever done what you did. Emily swallowed hard. I just did what was right, she said. Damien smiled again, that smile that was both human and not at the same time. I know, he said. That's why I'm here. He glanced around the empty diner. I know what's happening. I know about Officer O'Malley, about Gerald, about the 48 hours. How? Damien tapped his ear. Dragons have good hearing, he said simply. Very good. I heard everything, every threat, every conspiracy, every lie. Emily felt her legs weaken. Then you know, she said. You know we don't stand a chance, that we can't beat them. Damien extended his hand, the dragon hand, black scales gleaming, sharp claws glinting. Alone, no, he said. But you're not alone, not anymore. Emily stared at the outstretched hand, at the scales, at the claws, at the eyes that gleamed like liquid fire. And she should have hesitated. Should have questioned, should have wondered why a king would care about a waitress. But Emily had never been good at doing what she should. She took his hand. The scales were warm against her skin, and the moment their fingers intertwined, she knew everything had changed, forever. What are we going to do? She asked. Damien squeezed her hand. First, he said, we're going to make Officer O'Malley and Gerald understand something very important. What? Damien smiled, and this time, the smile showed all those sharp teeth. That they chose the wrong person to threaten. Emily was an ordinary waitress, with no power, no money, no connections. The only thing she had was courage, and sometimes courage is enough to change everything. If you've ever felt small in the face of powerful people, keep watching, because what happens next will show you that heroes come from the most unexpected places. Damien's plan was simple and absolutely terrifying. First, he said, we need the evidence you've collected. Can I see it? Emily showed him the photos on her phone. Damien examined each one, his dragon eyes gleaming brighter with each image. Good, he said, very good. But we need more. We need something that not even Gerald's money can buy. What? Confession, Damien replied. Direct, recorded, undeniable. And how are we going to get that? Damien grinned. Gerald Thornton is going to have a very interesting meeting today, he said, with a mysterious investor. An investor who's very interested in his business practices. Emily understood. You're going to pose as an investor? No. Damien shook his head. Investors don't go to meetings alone. They bring assistants. Emily felt her stomach drop. You want me to? I want you to be there, Damien confirmed. To listen, to record, to witness. When it's over, you'll have everything you need to destroy Gerald, and Officer O'Malley along with him. Emily looked around the empty diner, at the tables where she'd worked for 12 years. At the kitchen where Rosie had taught her how to make the perfect gravy, at the place that was her home. When? She asked. Damien glanced at his watch. 3 o'clock, he said. 3 hours. 3 hours to prepare to confront the man who was destroying everything she loved. Emily took a deep breath and said, Let's do it. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, a car pulled up in front of the diner. It wasn't a normal car. It was a limousine, black, gleaming, with tinted windows and a driver who looked more like a bodyguard than a chauffeur. Damien got out first, and Emily almost didn't recognize him. He still had the scales, still had the dragon eyes, still had the transformed hand. But now, he wore a suit that probably cost more than Emily made in a year, hair perfectly styled, posture of someone who commanded armies, which was exactly what he did. "Ready?" he asked. Emily looked at herself. Damien had provided clothes, a professional dress, heels, a leather briefcase. She looked like an executive. She didn't feel like one. "Ready," she lied. Damien extended his hand. The human hand this time. The other was hidden in a black glove. "You're going to be fine," he said. "I won't let anything happen to you." Emily believed him. She didn't know why, but she did. Gerald Thornton's office was on the top floor of the tallest building in town, a monument to the ego of a man who had built his empire on the lives of people who couldn't defend themselves. The elevator ascended in silence. Emily held the briefcase tightly. Inside was a recorder, discreet, professional, capable of capturing voices from 30 feet away. Damien had thought of everything. The doors opened. A receptionist greeted them. "Mr. Ashford," she said, "Mr. Thornton is expecting you. This way, please." They followed her down a marble hallway. Paintings on the walls, sculptures on pedestals, everything screaming wealth, power, importance. Emily felt nauseous. How much of it had been bought with money stolen from people like Rosie? The office door opened, and Gerald Thornton was there. Emily recognized him from the photos. 55 years old, graying hair, fake tan, used car salesman smile, shark eyes. "Mr. Ashford." Gerald extended his hand. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you. When my contacts said there was an international investor interested in local properties, well, I couldn't resist." Damien shook his hand, with the gloved hand. "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Thornton," he said, the voice perfectly controlled. "I've heard very interesting things about your methods of acquisition." Gerald chuckled. "Straight to the point. I like that." He gestured to the chairs. "Have a seat, please, Wag. Let's talk business." Emily sat down, placed the briefcase in her lap, and discreetly turned on the recorder. The conversation started with numbers, property values, rates of return, profit projections. Emily wrote everything down, pretending to be the perfect assistant, but inside, she was waiting for the right moment. Damien knew exactly how to provoke. "Impressive," he said at one point. "But I have a question. How do you get property owners to sell for prices that low? From what I've researched, some of these properties are worth significantly more than what you paid." Gerald hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. "Well," he said, "negotiation is an art. You need to understand the motivations of people. Motivations." Gerald leaned forward. "Listen." He lowered his voice. "Just between us, there are ways to create motivations. If you catch my drift, go on," Damien said. Gerald glanced at Emily. "Your assistant is trustworthy." "Absolutely," Damien replied. Gerald nodded. "Sometimes," he said, "stubborn property owners need a little incentive. A friend of mine on the force can be very helpful in these cases. Surprise inspections, documentation problems, that sort of thing." Emily felt her blood boil, but she kept her face neutral. "And this friend," Damien inquired, "is he reliable?" Gerald chuckled. "Officer O'Malley. He's the best investment I ever made. $2,000 a month and he takes care of any problem. In fact," he checked his watch, "he's wrapping up a job right now. Some old lady with a diner giving him trouble. He should be shutting the place down as we speak." Emily clenched her fists under the table. "Rosie." He was talking about Rosie, and he was laughing. "Fascinating," Damien said, his voice still calm, but his eyes started to glow brighter. "What if someone found out? About this arrangement? Found out? Gerald scoffed. Who's going to find out? The cops are O'Malley. The judges are my buddies. The press eats out of my hand. This town belongs to me, Mr. Ashford. Every block, every street, every single person. He leaned back in his chair, proud, arrogant, completely oblivious to what was about to happen. Every person, Damien repeated. So you think people are yours? To use as you please? Gerald shrugged. That's how the world works. The strong take, the weak give way. It's the law of nature. Damien smiled, but it wasn't a human smile, it was something else, something that made Emily instinctively recoil, something that made Gerald's smile die on his face. Law of nature, Damien said. Interesting. Do you know what the real law of nature is, Mr. Thornton? Gerald didn't answer, because something was happening, something impossible. The scales on Damien's face were spreading, covering more skin, glowing brighter. His eyes were no longer human, they were vertical slits, reptilian, burning with liquid fire, and the glove on his right hand it tore apart, revealing claws, black scales, a dragon's hand. The true law of nature. Damien continued. His voice was now a low roar, a tremor that Emily felt in her bones. Is that there's always something bigger, something stronger, something that makes sharks look like goldfish. Gerald stood up, stumbled, fell backward. Wait, what? What are you? Damien rose, and when he rose, the suit could no longer contain what he was. Horns sprouted from his forehead, small, curved, black as obsidian. Wings began to form on his back, not completely, just enough to tear the fabric, to show dark membranes, to reveal the creature he was. I am the Dragon King, Damien said, and you have just confessed to crimes against a person under my protection. Gerald screamed, a high-pitched scream, pathetic. He lunged for the door, but Damien was faster, impossibly faster. In the blink of an eye, he was between Gerald and the exit. The dragon hand snatched Gerald by the collar, lifted him off the ground like he weighed nothing. Please. Gerald whimpered. I have money. So much money I can... Damien brought his face closer, his dragon eyes inches from Gerald's terrified eyes. Your money means nothing to me, he said. Your life means nothing to me. The only reason you are still breathing is because she decided you deserve human justice. He glanced at Emily. Emily stood up. Her legs were shaking, but her voice wasn't. We have everything recorded, she said. Every confession, every crime, every name. When this goes public, now you will lose everything. Gerald looked from Emily to Damien, and finally understood the magnitude of the mistake he had made. The waitress, he whispered. You're the waitress from the home plate diner. Emily smiled. And you're the man who tried to destroy my family, she said. How does it feel to be the weak one now? Damien released Gerald. He fell to the floor like a sack of potatoes, trembling, sobbing, the most powerful man in the neighborhood, reduced to nothing. Now, Damien said, let's have a very honest conversation about what you are going to do next. Gerald nodded frantically. Anything, he said. I'll do anything, please, just don't hurt me. Damien looked at Emily. It's your call, he said. Emily thought. She thought about Rosie, about the home plate diner, about all the years of struggle, about all the people Gerald had destroyed. And then she said, first, you're going to call Officer O'Malley. You're going to tell him to call everything off, the inspection, the threats, everything. Gerald nodded. Second, you are going to sign a document ceding all the properties you stole back to the original owners. No compensation, but that will bankrupt me. Emily leaned in. Third option is him. She pointed to Damien. Gerald gulped. I'll sign, he said quickly. I'll sign everything. And third, Emily continued. You are going to confess everything, to the press, to the feds, to anyone who will listen. You will hand over every document, every piece of evidence, every accomplice. Gerald hesitated. If I do that, I'll go to jail. That is a distinct possibility, Emily agreed. Or you cannot do it. And find out what happens when a Dragon King gets really angry. Damien grinned. that grin full of sharp teeth. Gerald decided in a split second. "I'll confess," he said. "I'll confess everything." Emily turned. "Then we have a deal." She walked toward the door. Damien followed her, but before leaving, Emily stopped. She looked at Gerald one last time. "You know what's saddest," she said. "You had it all. Money, power, influence. You could have used it to help people, to build something good. But you chose to destroy. And now, you have nothing." Gerald didn't answer. There was nothing to say. Emily walked out. Damien closed the door behind them, and in the elevator going down, Emily finally let the tears fall. "Are you okay?" Damien asked. She said. "I'm perfectly fine. It's a lot, all of this. It's a lot." Damien put his hand on her shoulder, the human hand, warm, reassuring. "You were amazing in there," he said. Emily laughed through her tears. "I was terrified." "I know." Damien smiled. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. And you acted. When it mattered most." The elevator arrived at the ground floor. The doors slid open, and Officer Kevin O'Malley was waiting on the other side, with 6 armed cops. "Emily Carter," he said. The smile was pure venom. "You're under arrest for trespassing, theft of official documents, and assaulting a law enforcement officer." "Assault," Emily said. "I never." "You resisted arrest." O'Malley interrupted. "Last night, when we caught you breaking into my office, I have witnesses." He gestured to the cops behind him, all nodding, all lying. "Take her away," O'Malley ordered. 2 cops stepped forward, and Damien placed himself between them. "I wouldn't do that," he said. O'Malley laughed. "And who's going to stop me? You? I don't know who you think you are, pal. But if you interfere with a legal arrest, you're going to jail right along with her." Damien didn't move. "You know who I am, Officer O'Malley," he said quietly. "You've known from the first moment you saw me. You might not have understood. You might not have believed it. But something inside you knew." O'Malley hesitated. For a second. Just 1 second. But it was enough for Emily to see it. Fear. O'Malley was afraid of Damien. From the beginning. "Arrest them both," O'Malley ordered, his voice less firm now. The cops advanced and Damien, transformed, not completely, not possible in that space, but enough. Scales rippled across his exposed skin. Horns emerged. Partial wings tore through the back of his suit. Claws extended from his hands and his eyes. His eyes became pools of fire. The cops stopped. One of them dropped his gun. Another fell to his knees. "What?" O'Malley backed away. "What are you?" Damien took a step forward. The ground trembled. Not physically, but something trembled. Something in the air. Something in reality itself. "I am Lord Damien Ashford," he said. And the voice was no longer human. It was a roar. A thunderclap. It had a force of nature. "I am king of all dragons, and this woman Sam is under my protection." He extended a draconic hand. Pointed at O'Malley. "You have 2 choices, Officer O'Malley." He continued. "The first is to step aside. Accept the consequences of your action, and pray that human justice is kinder than mine." O'Malley swallowed hard. "And the second?" Damien smiled. "Do you really want to know the second?" O'Malley looked around. His cops were backing away. Some had already fled. Those who remained looked like they were about to faint. He was alone. Completely alone. Against something that wasn't human. Against something that could destroy him with a thought. And for the first time in his life, Officer Kevin O'Malley understood what his victims felt: powerlessness, terror, the certainty that there was no escape. He started. "Choose." Damien cut him off. O'Malley closed his eyes. "I surrender," he said, and fell to his knees. "Good choice," Damien said. He turned to Emily. The scales began to recede, the horns to shrink. Slowly he looked human again, but Emily would never see him that way again, never see him as just a man. "It's over," he said. "Not yet," Emily replied. "It's not over yet." She pulled her cell phone from her pocket, dialed a number. "Precinct Central," she said when they answered. "My name is Emily Carter. I have evidence of police corruption involving Officer Kevin O'Malley and businessman Gerald Thornton. Recordings, documents, confessions. You're going to want to hear this." The voice on the other end became very interested. Emily smiled, and as she spoke, she looked at Damien. He was smiling back, as if she was the most fascinating thing he had ever seen. As if she were extraordinary. Emily had spent her entire life being invisible, a waitress, an orphan, someone the world ignored. But in a moment of courage, she had become the most important person in the life of the most powerful being in the world. Sometimes, all we need is a chance to show who we really are. 2 hours later, the entire neighborhood was gathered in front of Precinct Central. The news had spread like wildfire: corruption, conspiracy, arrests, and at the center of it all, a waitress and a mysterious man. Emily watched from the entrance of the precinct. O'Malley was in handcuffs, Gerald too, both being led to separate patrol cars, and around them, all the people they had wronged, shop owners whose businesses they had destroyed, families they had evicted from their homes, people who had lived in fear for years, all there, all watching, all seeing justice finally served. Rosie was standing next to Emily, trembling. But not from fear, from relief. "How?" she whispered. "How did you do this?" Emily looked at Damien. He was standing a little apart, fully human again, just a regular guy in an expensive suit. But Emily knew the truth, and would never see him any other way. "I had help," she said simply. Rosie followed her gaze. She said. "He's not ordinary, is he?" Emily laughed. "No, definitely not ordinary." O'Malley passed by them, in handcuffs, defeated. He glared at Emily, and the hatred in his eyes was palpable. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You don't know who." One of the cops shoved him. "Shut up, O'Malley," he said. "You're in enough trouble." O'Malley was put in the patrol car. The door slammed shut, and Emily finally took a breath. "It's over," she said. Rosie hugged her. "My brave girl," she whispered. "My amazing girl." Emily closed her eyes, let Rosie's hug envelop her, and for a moment, she felt like she was home. 3 days later, the public hearing took place. Damien had arranged everything: lawyers, prosecutors, journalists, witnesses. The room was packed. Emily sat in the front row, and when the prosecutor presented the evidence, when the recordings were played, when the documents were displayed, the silence was absolute. Every crime, every bribe, every threat, all exposed for the world to see. O'Malley tried to deny it. Gerald tried to blame others, but the evidence was irrefutable. Recordings of their own voices. Confessing, laughing, boasting. The judge didn't need much time. "Kevin O'Malley," he said. "Gerald Thornton, you are charged with corruption, extortion, document forgery, abuse of authority, and criminal conspiracy. You are held in custody without bail pending trial." The gavel banged, and the entire neighborhood applauded. Emily looked at Damien. He was smiling. That smile that was human, and not at the same time. And Emily smiled back. After the hearing, Emily found Damien outside. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." Damien shook his head. "You did the hard work," he said. "I just gave a little nudge." Emily chuckled. "A little nudge? You terrified half the police department." "They deserve to be terrified," Damien replied. And then he looked at her with those impossible eyes. "You were the one who stood up first. You were the one who put yourself between me and a gun, not knowing who I was, expecting nothing in return." Emily felt her face flush. It was the right thing to do. Damien stepped closer, and she felt his warmth, that warmth that wasn't quite human, that dragon warmth. "I want to show you something," he said. "What?" Damien held out his hand. "Trust me." Emily looked at his hand, at his eyes, at everything he was, and took his hand without hesitation. Damien led her away from the crowd, to a quiet alleyway. And then he transformed, not partially this time, completely. Emily stepped back, because before her stood not a man, but a dragon, enormous, majestic, black and green scales shimmering, wings that blotted out the sky, eyes of fire that watched her with an impossible gentleness. "Climb aboard," the voice said. But it didn't come from anywhere. It came from inside her head. "Climb on my back," Damien repeated. "I want to show you my world." Emily should have refused. She should have run. She should have done anything except climb on the back of a dragon. But Emily had never been good at doing what she should, and she climbed on, and Damien flew. The world became small beneath them. The streets, the buildings, the entire neighborhood, all shrinking as they soared higher, until they were above the clouds, and Emily saw the Dragon Kingdom floating in the sky, towers of crystal, palaces of obsidian, hanging gardens where impossible flowers grew, and dragons, hundreds of dragons, flying between the structures like birds. It was the most beautiful thing Emily had ever seen. "This is my home," Damien said in her mind. "And it can be yours too, if you want it to be." Emily couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face, not from sadness, from something bigger. "Why?" she finally managed to ask. "Why me?" Damien landed on a crystal platform. Emily climbed down, and he transformed back, man again, but with scales still visible, mine horns still present, eyes still impossible. "Because in 500 years," he said, "you were the first to defend me without knowing who I was, the first to do the right thing simply because it was right, the first who made me believe that there's still goodness in this world." He stepped closer, touched her face. "You asked me why I was traveling among humans," he continued, "why I was in your diner that night. The truth is, I had lost faith. In humanity. In everything. My people told me humans were selfish, so cruel, incapable of sacrifice." He smiled. "And then you put yourself between me and a gun." Emily closed her eyes. "I'm not special," she said. "You're wrong," Damien replied. "You are extraordinary. And I've spent 500 years looking for someone like you." Emily opened her eyes. "What are you saying?" Damien knelt. One human hand, one dragon hand, both extended to her. "I'm saying that you changed everything," he said. "I'm saying that for the first time in centuries. I feel something. I'm saying that I don't want you to go back to that life. I want you to stay. Here. With me." Emily looked at him, at the King of Dragons, kneeling before her, offering his world, his heart. And she thought of Rosie, at the diner, of everything she had built. Damien seemed to read her thoughts. "Rosie can come too," he said. "I can heal her. My healers can heal anything, and the home plate diner." He smiled. "We can make the home plate diner serve dragons and humans. It would be the first of its kind." Emily laughed, a laugh wet with tears. "You're offering me a kingdom." "I'm offering you a choice," Damien corrected. "You can go back, resume your life. I will never blame you for it. But if you want to, you can stay and discover what we are, together." Emily looked at the kingdom around them, at the crystal towers, at the dragons flying, at the man kneeling before her. And her answer was the easiest thing she'd ever said. Yes. 3 months later, the home plate diner was different. The walls had been painted. The chairs didn't squeak anymore. The air conditioning worked perfectly. And half the customers weren't human. Emily smiled as she poured coffee for a blue-scaled dragon. He was enormous, even in humanoid form. He occupied 2 tables. But his eyes were gentle, and his smile was full of sharp but friendly teeth. "Thank you," he said. "You're welcome," Emily replied. Rosie was in the kitchen. But she wasn't the same Rosie from 3 months ago. The dragon healers had worked a miracle. The aches were gone. The weakness had vanished. Rosie looked 20 years younger, and she was cooking like never before, adapting recipes for dragon palates, creating dishes that no one had ever imagined. The home plate diner had become famous, not just in the neighborhood, in the whole world, the first restaurant where dragons and humans ate together, a symbol of something new, of something better. Emily walked to the corner booth, the same booth where it had all started, where a mysterious stranger had ordered coffee, where she had put herself between him and a gun. Damien was there, as he always was, every day, without exception. "Hello, my king," she said. Damien smiled. That smile that was human and dragon at the same time. "Hello, my queen," he replied, because that's what she was now, Emily Carter. "Our waitress is our orphan, our queen of dragons." She sat beside him. Officer O'Malley and Gerald had been sentenced the week before, 40 years each, without parole. The whole neighborhood had celebrated, and Emily had served free coffee to everyone. "Thinking about something?" Damien asked. "About how everything changed," Emily replied. 3 months ago, I was serving tables and trying to pay bills, and now I'm—" She laughed. "Queen of a dragon kingdom. Regretful. Never." She took his hand, the hand with scales, the dragon hand, and squeezed it. "You know what I love most about all this, she said. "What?" "That you still come here. Every day. To grab coffee at the home plate diner, the same place where they first met, even though he was a king, of a flying kingdom." Damien squeezed her hand back, tightly. "This place is special," he said softly, a wistful tone in his voice. "It's where I found hope, where I found kindness, where I found you." Emily leaned in. She rested her forehead against his. A gentle, loving gesture. "I love you," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "I love you too," Damien replied, his voice a low rumble. "In every form, in every language, forever." And when they kissed, Emily felt warmth, not the dragon heat she had grown to recognize, a different kind of warmth. Altogether, the warmth of being home, of being where she belonged, of being exactly where she was supposed to be. Rosie bustled out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Hey, you two," she chuckled, a glint in her eye. "No smooching in front of the customers. This is a respectable diner, you know." But she was smiling, a warmed, genuine smile. The same woman who had found Emily on the street 12 years ago, a scared, lost kid. The same woman who had simply said, "You look hungry," and changed her life. Now healthy, thriving, happy. Surrounded by dragon grandkids she had adopted without a second thought, her family, extended and loving. Emily straightened up, a sense of pride washing over her. She poured another round of coffee, the aroma filling the air, greeted another dragon customer with a warm, welcoming smile, smiled at another human family who had heard about the famous diner, the one with the unusual clientele, and thought about how it all started, with an act of courage, a simple yet powerful act, a moment of choice. Her waitress who decided to do the right thing, without knowing she was defending the most powerful being in the world, without knowing her life would change forever, without knowing she would find love where she least expected it. But maybe, just maybe, that was what made it so special. She hadn't done it for a reward. She had done it because it was right. And sometimes, just sometimes, doing the right thing is enough to change the world. One small act at a time, to find your place in the grand scheme of things, to live happily ever after, a genuine, enduring happiness. Emily served the last coffee of the day, the diner slowly emptying. Damien waited for her by the door, patiently, and together. Hand in hand, they walked home, to the flying kingdom, a world away, yet so close, to the impossible life they had built, together, a waitress and a king, a human and a dragon, forever and always. And so ends our story. A story about courage, about justice, about doing the right thing when no one is looking, about the power of kindness. Emily didn't have powers, or money, or connections. She was just ordinary. All she had was a good heart and an unwavering sense of what was right. And sometimes, just sometimes, that is enough to make all the difference. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming tales, and share it with someone who needs to believe that heroes exist in the most unexpected places, because they do. Sometimes, they're serving coffee at your local diner. See you in the next story. Stay hopeful and keep believing.